we're here today to talk all about Aston Villa's transfer window. Now, I would describe it as Aston Villa having attacked the transfer window with the early signings of Kamara, Diego Carlos, and Coutinho. Neil, how would you sum up Aston Villa's transfer window so far?
I think I'm really excited about the business they've done. I think everybody should be as well. And the reason being is that the whole of European football was kind of standing there, scratching their head, going, "How the hell are these guys getting out of the block so quickly?" You know, what? Like we caught, and I've no problem saying this. We caught the majority of the continent of Europe sleeping. Specifically with the capture of Diego Carlos, which everybody kind of says, "Oh, getting Kamara for free is a great transfer," and it absolutely is. But I think there was donkey work done there. I think there was 12 months worth of work of enticing him, of plumossing him is the word we use here in Ireland. I sometimes throw in these Irish words and I forget that it's not a universal language, but it's like we courted him for quite a while. And what makes me believe that is that you remember that video of Bodymore Heath when Kamara came and Steven Gerrard went over and shook his hand and said, "Where's your dad? Where's your dad? I must go down and talk to your dad." Like, he knew all these guys, he knew all his family, and he had done the donkey work of going in there. And for me, I think that that's really exciting to see that Aston Villa are in that situation. We even have now fans that are kind of wondering who the hell are Aston Villa and why are they shoving out their elbows here and getting chirpy in a queue, and that's a good place to be, because you don't want to be that plucky old kind of has been that some people saw Aston Villa as. Now we're puffing out our chest again, and with the signing of World Cup winners in Coutinho, with the signing of real up and coming stars like Kamara, and then also somebody that is really well admired in a what I'll probably call an unglamorous position of centre half in Diego Carlos. I think we'll be very proud of the work we've done.
Yeah, absolutely. Really well put. I think Kamara, particularly when you see him sort of just starting for France as well in centre midfield, 22 years of age, coming in from Marseille. I was really surprised we got him, to be honest, particularly when you saw him linked with clubs like Atletico Madrid. So very excited to see what he does. But for you yourself, which of the new signings we've got excite you the most?
Well, Kamara definitely excites me the most, because we have no other player who can do what he can do at the base of that midfield. If we do go playing with a base of midfield, we've nobody who's shown a propensity within the Premier League to be able to be an absolute workhorse and to touch the ball 70, 80 times a game. And that's what really that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm really excited about with Kamara, is he's shown it in Ligue 1. He's shown it for France, even in the internationals. And Didier Deschamps had entrusted him to be that main pivot player, and he seems to just look and search out for that work with the ball at his feet, along with being able to tackle as well. So I think that one for sure. But it will be a very close second. That would definitely be 1A, and 1B for me certainly will be Diego Carlos, from the point of view that he's just a nasty man. He's gonna kick you up in the air, and while I love the flamboyancy of players, and you love to see flicks and tricks, and you love to see people doing their job well, sometimes just an agricultural, robust defender, no matter where they are in the field, can really get people off their seat too. And I think Diego Carlos is like that. But for me, Kamara is a statement signing. It's even more of a statement signing than Coutinho, because people were really caught off guard with that one, even though we at Aston Villa, Aston Villa fans, knew something was brewing there.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll focus on Kamara first, I guess, before we get to Carlos. We've been screaming out for years at Villa Park that we needed a CDM. We needed a CDM. And I think the Villa in centre midfield have looked quite easy to overrun over the last few years, at least. Do you think Kamara solves that? And do you think he can kind of help other players as well, in the sense, let's say somebody like Matty Cash getting further forward, maybe Kamara might be better at sort of protecting him in behind if, let's say, Cash is caught further forward, or someone like Luca Dean. Do you think that Kamara can really help Villa step up, basically, as a player?
I think he'll bring the most out of a lot of players that we don't expect him to bring the most out of. I think the way the covering into the channels that Villa did with McGinn and with Ramsey, I'm not sure that they're going to do that as much next season.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they're going to do that, because I think Kamara will be entrusted to kind of, I'm not going to say, kind of push back into that back three and make it a back three. I don't think it's going to be as obvious as that. But I think Kamara will be that person there. We will push people wide and we will defend our box like we have done previously. So I don't think we're going to be filing players into those wide positions as much as we did last season. So therefore, I also don't think that Matty Cash and Luke Dean will always be attacking forces when we're in attack. But I think it's going to be very much a case of, okay, if you want your name and lights, you're going to have to get back as well a bit more. And I'm not really too concerned about Matty Cash doing that, but I am concerned on the opposite side from Luke Dean. I spoke to a guy who writes for Total Football Analysis, Fintan O'Reilly, on Boubacar Kamara, and he said one of the areas where when AVB was over the team, he said one of the areas that he kind of felt Boubacar Kamara was not managed the best was when he was isolated and he had to patrol sideline to sideline almost on his own. But then again, that was 2 years ago, and he has matured an awful lot from there. But so it'll be interesting to see what Steven Gerrard does. But I definitely think having that pivot player where we can actually go infield an awful lot more on that defensive attacking midfield third, as opposed to having to go wide and then bring our pivot player almost in as a Coutinho on the attacking third when he was getting swamped because we had no other person centrally that could potentially take the ball. I think that's going to see there's going to be a massive influx of creativity then in and around the middle midfield, but also allow our fullbacks to go forward as well.
Yeah, it's massively exciting to think what he might do. And, players like Jacob Ramsey have already shown so much potential. Last season scored a lot of goals, got a few assists. You sort of think, what could he be capable of with a player like Kamara, perhaps filling in some of those defensive duties, and McGinn as well, who obviously always seems to score more for Scotland than he does for Villa, largely because of his defensive output for Villa. But aside from Kamara, we've mentioned as well Diego Carlos. Now, looking at pictures of Diego Carlos, he looks like somebody who he's pretty tough, isn't he? I wouldn't want to get into a wrestling match with him or an arm wrestle, any of that. I don't think I'm going to be winning that. So he's got in an interview I did about Kamara, I heard he had some similarities to Pepe, who was quite a mean defender for Real Madrid. Villa for a long time have been quite a lot of ex-pros have talked about going to Villa Park and it being a nice place to play, and a lot of away teams have good records at Villa Park, like United, Tottenham in recent times. Do you think somebody like Diego Carlos can finally make Villa Park a place that is not fun to come to? Do you think he's somebody that adds a little bit of bite that maybe Villa just haven't had for quite a long time?
Yeah, I do think that, and I think it's been sadly missing, as you mentioned there. I think it has been sadly missing, not having that enforcer type person at the club. Like I'm even trying to think. I follow Aston Villa since like '92, and
Same.
I can't remember a massive enforcer. Ron Vlaar was hard as nails, but was that just our song for him? Did people really?
Yeah.
I can't think of somebody who booted someone up into the sky. Sean Teal used to be able to boot people up into the sky. But I don't remember us ever having that real big enforcer. Carlos Sanchez was brought in to be the enforcer, but it never really happened. And so I can't think of it. I can't think of a real hard man that was in my tenure sporting Aston Villa. And historically, we did have them. You'd think like of Alan Evans, you think like, and just watching back the 82 documentaries, and before that, you players like Andy Gray was a hard man. Rambo McNally was a hard man, but it seems to have in the Premier League era, I can't, and I'm sure people are screaming at the screen going,
exactly.
Wilfred Bouma or someone like that. But off the top of my head, I can't think of it. And I think it's been sorely missed because there's leaders who lead by inspiration. There's leaders who lead by doing. And while I don't think Diego Carlos is going to be captain of the team, everybody can appreciate somebody who's going to put their body on the line for their team. And that's quite important to have there too.
Yeah. And, obviously it raises questions about who might partner Carlos. For Sevilla, he played on the left side of the centre-back pairing with Jules Koundé, and they were the best La Liga defence last season. I think conceded the fewest goals at least. Do you think if he were to play on the left-hand side of the defence, you would assume then that would mean Mings is dropped to the bench? But do you think it'll be Mings and Carlos or Carlos and Concert? If you were to imagine how it might go this season?
For me, it's Mings and Carlos. And I know that Carlos has been playing on the left side. He has, excuse me, once again, he has for Nantes played on the right side. And this is something that I kind of tried to get into the weeds on, but I didn't put anything out in it because I couldn't get definitive statistics. But when you talk to people about it, they all say, "Oh, he's as adept." And while yes, it's like he didn't predominantly even play. Himself and Koundé weren't even predominantly left and right for Sevilla. It was a case of needs must. I think in that instance there. So I don't have any qualms about him playing as a right-sided centre back. And also once again, he could be somebody that when we do filter back into a three at the back, he could be somebody that maybe just plays centrally and tries to dictate the play from there when Kamara comes back, as opposed to maybe having Kamara being as that man who steps back into the centre. It would allow Diego Carlos to do that, but I think it's Tyrone Mings unless we go out and make another blockbuster signing in centre half, which I don't envisage us doing. I think a lot of our money will be devoted to sorting out that central midfield and getting number 8s in. Number 8s, I think, even plurally. But it'd be interesting to see if we do make any more central defensive additions. But I think it's Mings. I think it's Mings and Carlos for sure. I just don't think you could go from being captain to being dropped completely, essentially over an off season, because and also when Konsa's out injured and we're not going to really see him until September, I think that would be incredibly harsh on Tyrone Mings.
Yeah, completely. And, as you mentioned, Carlos and Kamara both add a bit of tactical flexibility. Kamara can drop into a back three, as can Carlos. So, and they add that quite a physical presence as well in that sort of central area, which I think Villa, I just feel like we've been lacking for a few years. So it's nice that it's been identified and they've attacked it so quickly in the transfer market to get that rectified, because obviously there would be a lot of competition for those two players. But if we look around elsewhere on the pitch for Villa, you mentioned the number 8s there as well, actually. Is there any way you think Villa still need to improve, and are there any particular players you would love to see Villa kind of maybe go for, or anyone that's caught your eye?
I actually think we need to improve on all three lines. I think we need a new left back. Not a new left back, apologies, a new backup left back, or at least an auxiliary left back. I think that is something that will be looked at. I think we need at least one new number 8, depending on who stays or who goes. And look, I'm going to take a wily old fox in around the box, or I'm going to take somebody who's more of a true striker than a workhorse, like we see in Danny Ings and Ollie Watkins. Don't get me wrong, and I've done loads of pieces on strikers this season, and their stats don't shape up favorably towards other strikers, but I'm looking at those from the point of view of solely, can this guy put the ball in the back of the net? Is he a born bred striker? Is he the guy that wants to open up the back page, and does he do a dance around his kitchen because he sees his name in lights? And I don't think we've got that type of striker. So I think and they don't grow on trees either, believe me, but if you had somebody who was maybe a bit more selfish up front, then either of those two guys, I think that would be beneficial. But I would hazard to guess who Aston Villa will be thinking at in that aspect. But I do think if I was to throw out a couple of names, I would love Zinchenko. Would be my personal favorite. A lot of people, when I brought up his name, I did a podcast on it, and a lot of people were saying, well, he's not going to usurp Luka Dean, and that's fine. That's brilliant. I don't want him to. I want Ukrainian Zinchenko, and Zinchenko is a central midfielder converted to left back just because Pep Guardiola didn't have people there in that left back position. Then they bought more in the central midfield position, and now Zinchenko, one of his reasons for potentially wanting a move is not just for full time or to be playing full time, but it's also he wants to move back into that central midfield position. I found some really good tape of him when he was with Ufa, I think is how you pronounce it, UFA. In the Russian league, and he's only like 18, 19 years of age. And my God, if you were to play that tape for people now, they would be saying spend 50 million on him. Like, he's just outrageous. And you see him playing for Ukraine. He runs the show in midfield for Ukraine. And people automatically think, well, he's not good. We already have a 6 now. Kamara, he's not a 6. He's a definite 8. And he's just a guy who is willing to roll up his sleeves and do a job at left back, and then got put into that rotation at left back for Man City. And to be honest with you, he's done it pretty well, even though he has, over the years, you could probably point to him and say he hasn't tracked back enough in this area or whatever. But the guy is really good. So he'd be someone I would be very much in favour of. You've seen Conor Gallagher being linked today. Conor Gallagher, I think, is very similar to the Aston Villa midfielders that we have already, which isn't a bad thing. A lot of people think that's a bad thing. But if you think about the tactical stability of being able to take off a Jacob Ramsey and still having that ball carrying ability of Conor Gallagher, or taking off him again and still having that pressuring ability of a Conor Gallagher, that still is that's still beneficial too. So I think that, and I do think that he is somebody on the radar. It's just like it's a link that won't go away now over the last 2 or 3 months. And then I think, just depending on where Cameron Archer and Keenan Davis end up, I think we might see the controversial man from Uruguay maybe rock up into, because until he signs for another team, it's going to be Aston Villa. Aston Villa are going to be in the mix for him. And that's definitely going to polarize people. But as I say, it's one that until you see him on the pitch holding another team's shirt, Villa are always going to be linked with him. So I think they're the 3 main areas, really. A fox in the box that can take the weight off our strikers, because if Cameron Archer is loaned out, and midfielder a number 8, if not 1, I do think I personally would want 2, because I don't think the Sanson as much is going to be here next season. And I think that one of the 2, I think our wingers, you see Trezeguet, Bertrand Traore, El Ghazi all being linked to a place with moves out. I think you kind of need to consolidate that number 8 room. And because I also believe that Carney Chukwuemeka is going to be used as the third 10. Whether I agree with it or not, considering how he played for England under 19s in that number 8 role, but I suppose he has versatility there. So I think midfield will be the main area that we'll focus on, but we could have a bit of fireworks up top and a bit of and some left back business done as well in between.
I love the Zinchenko I mentioned. Yeah, he's a fantastic, sort of versatile, very intelligent player, I think.
Yes, intelligent is exactly how I describe him.
Yeah, and a real a player who looks like he's putting in a lot of effort, and sometimes that kind of can seep through a team as well. So I'd be a big fan of that, I think, if it were to ever to happen. But you also mentioned Cameron Archer, and I know you've done a lot of interviews about kind of our loan players last season. The Villa U team obviously is extremely exciting at the moment, as exciting as I've ever seen it, to be honest. Is there anyone you think might break through into the first 11 next season? I know Archer's probably the most likely, you'd say.
Archer for sure, yeah. I think obviously Young Tim would have been my big would have been the next big bet. I think they're based on, like, they're just so high in him. But I think Michael Beale is going to continue his development at QPR. I think it seems to be more or less a given now that that's going to happen. I think myself that we will see. You've got Kane Kessler-Haydens and the likes that are going to be in around the team, but I think Ben Cressine. I can't pronounce his surname. I've never gotten a definitive enough to pronounce his surname, but I think he's going to be the next man up. And I think even though we spoke about and that's why for me Zinchenko becomes a really. I would almost go to say is that Aston Villa should be ringing Manchester City. If he's thinking about going to Everton, and I know he's got a real big link with Mikalenko that's there. I know the 2 of them are best mates, and that could be something that's driving him towards Everton from that point of view. But I would be banging out the door for Zinchenko if I was Steven Gerrard, because what would happen is, even if he is playing so well in that 6th or in that 8th position in midfield, you've got somebody like Ben Cressine, how somebody needs to tell me how to pronounce it, because I'm so conscious of it. That he's going to be thereabouts, I think, this season. He's been on the bench. Ashley Young hasn't re-signed after there was the clamour that we were going to get that contract done, and he can still learn behind Digne. And we always still have the opportunity to have Zinchenko pop in there if needs be. If Christian can't step up to the mark there. But I think that he's definitely the next person on the up and up within Aston Villa. It's really another person that I think has kind of really gone under the radar this year, and he had a pretty decent loan spell out in Carlisle, was Brad Young. And I just don't know where they see him, because I think he might have been very much a Dean Smith favourite. Yeah. I just don't know where we've heard nothing of him. He's been completely and utterly in the wilderness. So he'll be somebody interesting to look at there, considering he was so prolific for the 18s last year, 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fun to be able to go through all these different names and like, all of them believe that they could have like a good career in professional football. I mean, it's so rare to see so many names in a youth team who have such potential. But I think Kane Kessler-Hayden as well at MK Dons and Swindon last season absolutely tore it up. And it sounds like there might be another loan for him, but he'll stick around with Villa through pre-season, I believe, just so that Gerrard can have a closer look.
I think, and it was when I was doing my loan watch, and these guys, I think they all made this really good point that I never really copped before. That you tend to see an awful lot of loans ramp up after the first round of the League Cup is over. Premier League teams tend to use these guys in their first, provided that they don't draw another Premier League team, that you tend to use these guys in their first League Cup fixture. And then the loans happen then after that, because the first round, the second round are done, and the third round then of the League Cup doesn't happen until mid-October, November, sometime in and around there. So they get to see these guys in a game against professional, against non-under 23s or 18s or whatever, and then they make a decision then on loaning them out. So I think that we may not have a massive exodus of loans until maybe the end of August, until after the first League Cup game is played.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something I haven't thought about as well, actually. But another one as well, of course, is Louie Barry. There was a lot of hype around Barry, with his Barcelona background and all that. And but struggled at Ipswich, I think, probably for no reason of his own. I think it was just that Ipswich signed so many strikers after he came in that it was always going to be hard for him to get game time. Whereas at Swindon, there were some signs. He had a good goal scoring record in League Two, and one of them goals he scored was absolutely fantastic as well. So hopefully another loan for him next season will really see him develop, and maybe Swindon is the place, or I don't know, maybe somewhere else might pick him up. But aside from all the youth players, we've also had quite a bit of transition this summer with Neil Critchley's come in from Blackpool, and Michael Beale has gone to QPR. Now, there was a lot of talk, when Steven Gerrard joined from Rangers, that Michael Beale was like the brains of the operation almost. I'm never too sure that it's a coach who's really the brains of operation. I think it's a collaborative effort, really. But Neil Critchley, I know again you did an interview about him. Thoughts on him? Is it a bit like El Ghazi and Trezeguet, that substitution, Critchley and Beale? Is it like, the same person coming in, basically?
It's an interesting dichotomy that the two of them have, because they have been like ships in the night in a lot of their appointments and such. Obviously, both of them being through the Liverpool under 23 school and coming up through that management structure and so on. I think obviously Critchley has been able to take Beale is at the stage now where he's able to take his mindset, he's able to move and see if he can be the number one. The thing was, Critchley was being a very good number one while he was out of Blackpool, and obviously this once again, I talk about catching the footballing fraternity cold and sleeping. This one caught everybody sleeping. I mentioned it in the podcast kind of as a throwaway, saying, wouldn't it be great if Critchley hadn't been appointed as Blackpool manager? Because I think he the continuity from his footballing philosophy coming from Liverpool under 23s, having worked with Gerrard before, having worked with Michael Beale, it would be a seamless transition. Then all of a sudden he was signed. I was like, I have no idea, because we thought it was originally going to be oh gosh, his name escapes me. Mike, the assistant manager at Blackpool, was going to come in. Wow. And his name just completely and utterly escapes me. His surname does now. But then it was Neil Critchley, and everyone was like, wow, this is and you have to think it is a very good appointment, considering that he was getting quite good reviews as a full-time manager based on what he did in turning around Blackpool, bringing them from League One to the Championship, and then against all odds, bringing them to a 16th place finish with a young team. And I think that's one of the reasons, that's the remit that he's been brought in with, is, all right, we're not going to continue to spend 100 million every season. And I think this is probably the last season where we're going to blow close to 100 million or for a season or two, specifically for not in Europe. I think it's going to be a case of, well, now young Tim, there you go. Now Carney, now Cameron Archer. Let's see if you guys can propel us up the league, or at least pad the areas that we need you to pad. Because the club just can't keep spending the cash that they're spending. And I think that's a conversation for another day, but it's definitely a conversation that's needed.
Yeah, it's amazing how Villa sort of get these things done so quietly all the time, so effectively. It shows quite a well-organised, well-run ship, I guess, really. Critchley coming in, I think it was a day after Beale left, or a day or two. I was just mind blown by it, really. And particularly getting a manager of a team coming in, from the Championship is very rare can't think of too many examples of that where they've left the managerial role and then gone to be an assistant. But it's a great sign, I think, for Gerrard and the appeal of him, probably. But we talk about Villa being very quiet, getting things done quietly. Are you expecting any more kind of surprise transfers, or maybe another outgoing or two this summer?
I think you always have to expect a surprise transfer realistically, since Purslow has been here. I think you have to, nobody knew anything about Wesley signing. Remember when we signed him, and all of a sudden it was like Villa are really close to a 22 million pound deal with Club Bruges or whoever it was for Wesley. Everyone was like, who the hell is he? Then you find out he's got one leg longer than the other, and he's got an amazing backstory. He's another guy who'll probably be coming back to the club as well, and maybe somebody, and definitely somebody who has to prove his worth. I think there will be a surprise. I think there's somebody out there that none of us are thinking about, or maybe that there's somebody out there that might have been tentatively linked, or we'll have a scenario or a situation whereby there'll be a player that Aston Villa would have been out on, and then all of a sudden he signs, and they'll, because Villa tend to do that. They tend to be in for a player or be linked with a player. It goes quiet, and then all of a sudden Villa are the guys to sign him again. Same thing happened with Kamara. Atletico Madrid looked like it was a nailed-on deal. Villa came in and Villa got him in the end. At the end of the day, same thing with Diego Carlos. Newcastle United looked like they were going to just come back and sign him again, because they more or less had him in January. Then he rocks up at Villa, and I think it's okay to do that to gazump teams. So I think we will see a bit more. I think we'll see that more ramp up from next week onwards as the players get back in the building.
Yeah,
I heard somewhere, I read somewhere that they're back for preseason fitness tests and stuff at the end of next week. So and then preseason training starts proper then the week after, minus the international. So I would imagine once people get back into the building after the breaks that they've had, it'll be easier to get the support staff around, have the conversations that are needed to be had, maybe have medicals, maybe do medical checks or whatever needs to be done, and then try and get players out and into the club.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see it going as well. I think that, maybe they'll try and get one more in before the trip to Australia. And then Douglas Luiz, he seems to be sort of tentatively linked away, doesn't it? How do you feel about that one?
I was going to say Douglas Luiz might be a surprise outgoing.
It's a
I'm going to be honest here. Like he's found the love of his life so far here in Villa at Villa Park, and she's staying around. So what's the incentive to move? He's still going to get game time at Aston Villa next season. It'll be an interesting one. It will be an interesting one. I don't know, could the club turn down 35 million for him? Because I spoke about spending money, recouping of money. I think is going to be high on the list. If not this year, next year, I think we could just about get away with what we've recouped in seasons past so far. But I definitely think next season we will be looking to recoup money on players, because if you're 25-man squad limit for a reason, because they don't want clubs to start overspending. And Villa don't get into Europe, that 25-man squad could be populated with a lot more young players than probably we need, or we would be used to, specifically since we got relegated to the Championship. So Douglas Luiz, I don't want him to go. I think he's a valuable player. I think that he's been much maligned from playing in a position, taking one for the team. And I think that's more or less commonplace now, that people believe that now, and because it is true. But I think that if Mourinho was to come in with 35 million and above, I think the club would seriously consider it, because I think, much not as I said that he's a good player within the club, he's here, he's part of the fabric of the club now. I do think he's replaceable, and I think he's replaceable for less than 35 million. But that's the problem. Do you want to have to put pressure on yourself to replace somebody you know can play within your system, or do you back yourself to do that? And it'll be interesting to see what Johan Lange, what Purslow, and what the brain trust within the dugout feel about that too.
Absolutely. Well, Neil, it's been absolutely brilliant to chat to you. I honestly feel like I could sit here for weeks on end just talking. You're just such an interesting.
I'd love to.
Yeah, and but I assume most people who've listened to this podcast and are watching on YouTube will know your work and will know where to find you. But for those maybe who haven't, would you be able to let us know where we can find everything you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll find me on For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast, available on YouTube, on any of the podcast platforms. wherever you get podcasts. We're the only podcast called For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. So there's going to come a day where I know somebody's just going to set one up just to piss me off, just so that I can't say that anymore. But so I might have to trademark it or something like that. But I don't think anybody's got Paul McGrath that high up and on their list outside of Aston Villa to go in and usurp the podcast name. But you'll find me anywhere For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. On Twitter, I'm at Love McGrath Pod. You'll be able to find me there. And delighted to interact with any Villa fans or any fans of any club, because football is a universal language, and sometimes you've got people who come at you and they say things, you don't know what you're talking about, and then after 5 minutes of talking to them, you become best mates. And things, it's not a war out there. For any Newcastle United fans, it's not a war out there. You don't need to have a fake rivalries. Just talk to us as people. Yeah,
no, absolutely agree. Absolutely, one of the top football podcasts, let alone Villa podcasts, are out there. So strongly recommend you look up For the Love of Paul McGrath.